and welcome to this event to celebrate and discuss this wonderful book, Latin American Plays in Translation, Modern Stories of Gender, Class and Society in Latin America. It was published by Bloomsbury this year, and it contains 6 new plays translated into English, and it was edited and produced by Global Voices Theatre. My name is Sophie Stevens, and I'm based in the UK, where I'm a senior lecturer in Latin American and Caribbean Studies. I'm also a theatre translator and a member of the Out of the Wings Theatre Translation Collective, and I'll be moderating the discussion today. I was very fortunate to be at events in London when some of these plays were shared as readings, and I'm really looking forward to hearing about how this work has developed since then into the publication. I'm really delighted that we have in this virtual room with us, as well as hopefully people joining us online, we have playwrights and contributors to the book, as well as translators. If you'd like a full list of everyone who was involved in the book, please refer back to the event page because you have the details there. And also, if you don't already, hopefully you will soon have the book. And of course, you can find all the details in the contents of this beautiful edition. I'll be handing over to those playwrights and translators and producers who are in the room to, first of all, introduce themselves, the work that they contributed to the book, and share a reflection on Latin American theatre beyond and across borders. That will be the first part of this session. In the second part, we'll have the opportunity for questions. So you will see that you can, through the event page, write questions to us. If something occurs to you as someone's speaking, you're very welcome to add something straight away, or I'll invite them after we've heard from each of the contributors in our virtual book launch. So please do note down questions. We'd really love to interact with you, but I'm going to hand over first of all to Zhui Ning, producer and co-editor, to introduce the volume. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. Hi everyone, my name is Zhui Ning Chang. I'm one of the tripartite members of Global Voices Theatre and a co-editor on Latin American Plays in Translation. So today I'd like to take us briefly through the journey of how the anthology came to be, from its inception as part of Global Voices events to the curation and collaboration with the Roundhouse, and the eventual relationship with Bloomsbury and the publication itself. So to start us off, Global Voices Theatre was a theatre company with a mission to amplify international theatre by underrepresented global artists. It was founded in 2018 after the success of the Global Queer Plays event at Arcola Theatre, which was conceived and curated by William Gregory, who is with us today and will present afterwards. Global Voices was born out of that event and was led by 3 artists, which were Laura Krasteva, Robin Skyer, and myself. We were creating work in a post-Brexit context in the UK, where xenophobia was on the rise and internationalism in theatre was seen to be quite radical and quite risky as something to do by the theatre establishment. But it was something that I think we really believed in, and we really worked to advocate for international playwriting, for artistic practices that were not just rooted within the UK, and to collaborate with various artists across borders. This is both with artists who are based all over the world, as well as with the immigrant and diaspora theatre communities that are in the UK itself. For the 7 years that Global Voices Theatre was active, we were entirely project funded, so we essentially survived project to project and event to event. In this time, we had produced 10 rehearsed readings, spotlighting different communities under different themes, working with over 250 creatives of various disciplines. We also organized 2 semesters of Pay What You Can theatre education, centering the expertise of artists of color, ran a podcast spotlighting international playwrights, and contributed to various academic and industry discussions about decolonization, theatre programming, international theatre, and theatre in translation. As part of this work, in 2019, which felt like an eternity ago now, we were an associate company at the Roundhouse in London. And as part of our associate residency there, we were invited to produce 2 events. These became Global Black Voices and Global Latin American Voices. we invited on board for Global Latin American Voices Malu Ansaldo as our curator. She was at that time the Roundhouse head of programming and performing arts, and was very, very excited about this event. We disseminated an open call for Global Latin American Voices. This is the model that we use for all our events because we didn't want to only liaise through agents or through any kind of system that requires a submission fee. So an open call will allow anybody to reach us where possible, spread it across all our networks. And we really wanted to find work that would reflect the sort of the breadth and the diversity of concerns, styles, and contexts in Latin America. The final lineup was 5 plays that was selected by Malu with support from the Global Voices community as well as a slush reading team. In the end, we worked with, I think it was 24 creatives total from across the Latin American diaspora who brought to life the 5 plays in their various excerpts. And those plays were from Chile, Mexico, Peru, and Argentina. And there was a post-show discussion that closed it out, reflecting on both the connections that were found across the plays as well as Latin American theatre in the UK. So, and that particular event was also our the Global Voices event with the highest number of translated plays, which I was really happy about. That event also took place about the same time, or I think just after the start of the 2019 political protests in Chile. So at that point, we also facilitated during the event a space for a statement to be read in solidarity, which was done by Chilean theatre maker Fran, who is with us today. The video is still available on Fran's Instagram in case anyone wants to go and view it. And I think for us, both in the Global Latin American Voices event as well as more broadly, we are not really Global Voices Theatre doesn't seek to be representative of any of the countries where we showcase plays from. We don't suggest that any region has any certain kind of play, but what we are really interested in was to bring to the attention of UK audiences the sort of the richness and the range of theatre storytelling that exists beyond what they are normally exposed to, and also to facilitate spaces for immigrant diaspora artists to connect and create something meaningful together. So just going to bring this to a close quickly with the book anthology. This was in 2024, 2025, when we were in the process of winding down Global Voices as a company. It was we had collaborated before on a different anthology with Methuen Drama and Bloomsbury after an introduction from William. And even though we were going to close down the company soon, we were really keen that we had quite a big archive of plays that we didn't want to be lost. And we really wanted the plays and the writers to have a legacy beyond us as a company. So very generously, the editors at Bloomsbury, they were very interested to bolster their collection of Latin American plays. And we set about pulling the manuscript together. We kept all the original plays from the 2019 event. And we also added one more, which was She by Susana Torres Molina from an earlier Global Female Voices event. And this was actually really nice because every event in Global Voices only showcases an excerpt of each play, but anthology gives us an opportunity to share the play in its full form. And something that was really important to me as well while pulling this together is that I wanted to make sure that the work of the translators was spotlighted, because we wouldn't really have the place without them. And a lot of times I feel especially in the publishing and theatre context, we forget or diminish the work of translation. So every play in the anthology comes with a translator's note and a preface where they could contextualize the play and their process and choices for the audience to understand. We also had an introduction from Malu in recognition of all the work that she had done to bring the plays together from the start. And the anthology also serves as a kind of swan song project for Global Voices to sort of close us out and sort of set us off on a high, which was really nice. I think I'm really happy with the work that we've done at Global Voices and that it will live on through the Latin American plays in translation anthology. So, and I hope they all find new lives, new productions in the future to keep showcasing how brilliant these writers are. And that's everything from me. So.
Thank you. Thank you for that really wonderful introduction and also for signaling all the different types of work that goes into producing or getting to a moment where you might create an anthology like this. And that might be something we can talk about a bit more when we come to the discussion. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Xavier Villanova, a Mexican playwright, who is going to speak to us next about his contribution to the book and also Latin American theatre more broadly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sophie. Thank you so much, Zhui Ning Chang, and everyone on the table, Fran, Olivares, William, Gregory, everyone on this panel. It's such a privilege to be able to share this table, to be able to present this book, which was such an effort, a collective effort to bring it to life in order for this place to reach wider audiences. This is so amazing, and I'm truly honored to be a part of this. So, good evening. My name is Javier Villanova. As Sophie just said, I'm a playwright, a theater director, a teacher, an actor. We all try to juggle everything. As I'm also a translator, so I know how difficult and hard it is to get all the nuances and everything that and all the context and all the specificities. So I truly am grateful to all the translators that did such an amazing job. Roberto Cavazos, my very own translator for Nezahualcóyotl Dreams in Methuen, York. It's such a terrific job that you did, guys. Thank you so much. And for me, just talking about who I am as a playwright, my theater, I always say that I write from fracture to action, just to introduce a little bit about myself, because I think that characters only are spurred into action because they have a wound, because they have something that is like riving them, that's breaking them, turning them into pieces, and now they are compelled to do something about it. I think that's the reason why characters are thrown or cast into a play. And as Harold Pinter says, he doesn't really know what he's going to talk about until he actually takes them out of a dark closet and he asks them, what do you need to say? What is the wound that is going to move you into existence? And that's where I try to write. That's the play. That's my starting point. But I also think that's many of our starting points as Latin American playwrights, because we live in the margins. I think talking about Latin American trends and where are we writing from, I think as playwrights, male playwrights, female playwrights, queer playwright, doesn't matter if the gender, we are Latin American and we are like in a crack, in a crevice. I think we're always, in a sense, yearning to belong, yearning to be part of a bigger conversation, to be part of the world, but always feeling like in the diaspora, always feeling in exile, or like we don't kind of fit in the bigger, larger conversation, while we do, of course. But there is this sense of displacement, of being discarded, or we all like being vulnerable groups. I don't either because of ethnicity or gender, or just because like they call us like third world countries. And that thing that exists in our brains, even consciously or unconsciously. I think when we write, we're trying to prove something, but at the same time, we're trying to say like, I don't need to be whatever you imagine of Latin America. I don't need to be indigenous. I don't need to be folklorical. I don't need to write about Dia de Muertos, the Day of the Dead. Like, I don't have to play out your fantasy of Latin America, but at the same time, it's almost inevitable not to fall into some cliches and stereotypes. Like, for example, this play, the Nezahualcóyotl Dreams in Mictlan, York, my play that is included in this anthology, was just read in the Prologue Center in Taiwan. And when at the middle of the discussion, they were saying like, but your play actually touches on migration. So that's a very Mexican play. Like they were like saying like, in a sense, like, of course, Mexicans are going to write about migration, right? Or about people who need to leave their country in search for a better world. And they also read Manolo Diaz, because I recommended some playwrights, and they also read Manolo Diaz, Temporada de Ciervos, Deer Season, and it's a play that has drug dealers, right? Narcotraficantes. And they said like, but it's such a cliche that you sent this play that has drug dealers. And I was like, well, it's a reality. It's a given fact. And it's not that we want to write about blood or about narcos or about, it's that this is our day-to-day life sometimes, and we do not escape it. We face it. I think Latin American theater has a lot of, like, we write about everything and anything. we write about, like my place happens in New York. We write, and people are like, but you're Mexican. Yeah, we can write about anything and anywhere. I mean, we're not constrained to talk about poverty or to talk about bureaucracy or magical realism, but we do have to cope with dictators. We do have to cope with political struggle. We do have to cope with gender issues. And racial issues, and policies that are still not enforced, and education that is still not, like, in a broader sense, applied to everyone, injustice. So there's a lot of things that we do have to address in our plays, and I think we do. Like playwrights in Latin America, and I cannot speak for everyone, but whenever I read a Latin American play, it has some sense of urgency. Like it's so alive because we kind of want to fix our little corner of the world, or try to propose a solution, or try to find a space where we can exist, where we can be heard, where we can be seen and say, we're here resisting, we're here fighting, we're here in a resilient way, we're here also grieving. And in a way, I wanted to start with this fracture idea, from fracture to action, because I do believe that we as playwrights, we're fractured, we're broken, and that makes our characters more endearing, more vulnerable, because people might connect in a more pathetic way with pathos, with their emotion, because our characters don't feel like they're entitled, like they have a right to be. They're trying to fight for that right to be in the global stage, to be. So this ontology in my brain is like such. It's so amazing to be part of that global stage. It's like a breath of fresh air, because when I googled, I found out that there are not many, if not, I didn't find more than two or three anthologies of Latin American plays translated into the. I thought there would be more, and maybe William will help us. Like, where can we find more plays in English or in Russian or in Chinese or in other languages? But I found out that there is still a lot of ground we haven't covered, and the people don't know where to find those plays. And that even if we're still here and our characters might be the discarded or the forgotten or the vulnerable or the resilient, there's still much work to do in order for people to know that we're here, that we're writing to survive. There's a lot of survival in a play, that there's death, there's blood, there's song, there's beauty, there's poetry, but we want to be heard and we want to participate. We want to sit at the table. So it's so nice, and I'm so grateful, as I already said, to be part of this table and to be able to share this conversation with people like you guys, but also to tell the audience and the theater directors and the playwrights elsewhere in the world that if you want to like enter an entire different geography of theater, because I think the Latin American theater works in a very absurd kind of way. Like our theater is like very Beckett, like it's very Beckett. There's a lot of like it's not stuck in realism or in naturalism. Like it always gets out of the cracks of realism, and even if it wants to be a realistic play or wants to be a naturalistic play, it always breaks the fourth wall or even breaks its own construction, because Latin America can be extremely surreal, everyday life. Like things happen that you go like, am I dreaming or am I alive? That's why also my play is called as Our Fatal Dreams in Methuen, York, because it talks about dreamers and migration, but it also talks about people who are no longer know if what they're going through is actually happening. Is it a dream? And I think we're living in that kind of state right now, not only in Latin America but in the world, with what's going on with Trump and Iran and Gaza and everything just like exploding everywhere, and Maduro, and so the world is extremely crazy. But again, if you want to enter an entirely different realm, plays that have their own logic, I would definitely invite you to come to this fracture, to come to this crevice, to jump into the Tartarus of Latin American plays and just take a plunge. And I believe that you will find out that it's very human, but at the same time, it will also reveal some truths that you might not know because you live in another country or another continent or even in another reality, if I may say so. So, well, that's it for me. For the moment, I hope I didn't confuse you with all of the topics that I tried to cover in just these few minutes, but I'm truly grateful, and I will pass it on to William. I believe it's next.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that contribution. And I think you've done a really good job of helping us to think about how Latin American theatre might be things that you expect, but also lots of things that you don't expect, because there's such a diversity, there's such a range of themes, and perhaps themes or points of view brought together in ways that you might not have anticipated. And that's part of the richness of this volume and of Latin American theatre and writing more broadly. So thank you for those insights. And I'm sure we can talk more about that, but I am indeed going to hand over to William Gregory to speak next.
Thank you, Sophie, and hello, everybody. It's really great to be with you all this afternoon here in London. My name's William Gregory. I'm a translator and dramaturg, and I was the translator in this particular volume of a play entitled La Jana by Juan Pablo Aguilera, which is a wonderfully exciting and mobilizing one-woman show about the aftermath of the tsunami and earthquake that struck coastal Chile some years ago, and how that town struggled to rebuild itself. But I've been asked today to talk more widely about the availability of Latin American theatre in English translation. And Xavier, if you're feeling anxious and frustrated that you can't find it, don't worry, my friend, I got you. I've been spending quite a while on Google and racking my brains. So what's going to follow is a whistle-stop tour of where you might find Latin American theatre in English translation. I haven't prepared a detailed bibliography, so perhaps if anyone's watching this on catch-up, you might want to get a pen and paper and hit the pause button and make some notes. Fran, you're prepared. Wonderful. As you go along. And also, hopefully, technology will allow me to share my screen as I have some visual aids. Let's have a look here.
If you go on mute, William, we'll hand over to Fran Olivares.
Well, yes, no problem at all. I hope it works now, William. And yes, hello, everyone. I'm really, really excited to be here. It's a real pleasure to be part of this anthology, and to was part as well of the Latin American, the Global Latin American Voices back in 2019. And yes, my name is Francisca Olivares Medina. I'm a Chilean theater director, translator, and theater maker. Same as Xavier, wearing many hats daily, exactly, weekly. And well, I'm based here in London, and my work travels and across Spanish and English daily. And my practice as well moves between, directing, translation, the rehearsal room, schools, writing as well. So lots of collaboration daily. And I guess my work as a translator also comes from that sort of collaboration and constant looking for new things, getting very curious. So I started my journey, I guess, as a translator with this play in particular back in 2016. I was studying here my master's in theater directing, and I wanted to develop a workshop where I could translate a play from Chile, specifically plays by Carla. This play that I translated is called The Sad Summers of Princess Diana, Los Tristísimos Veranos de la Princesa Diana. And I've been always really passionate of Carla's work. I think her work in general, and of course this play they all resonate deeply with me as a person. We come from the same drama school, the same year. So I feel like there is a thing about our generation and some, of course, personal and artistic connection between the work that we do, even though she went through, or I guess she went, she followed the path of the dramaturgy and I followed the path of directing, performance. But we meet constantly, and I guess her work is written with such a force, intelligence, irreverence. It's it's emotionally sharp, and her plays, like this one, is a play full of outrageous characters that are horrendous, that are in extreme situations, or I guess rendered with humor, with a deeply theatrical language as well. And they are very camp, heightened, excessive, and all the things that I love as a theater maker. So I guess I started translation because I was very passionate about being able to bring plays that were important or matter to me, because I wanted to direct them. So I guess it was a very kind of like selfish way of, I guess, approaching translation, because it was like, I really love this, so I want to do it, without knowing anything. Or even like, I guess back then it was like, oh, but how can you translate, because you're not native speaker? Like, how are you going to do that? So I faced a lot of barriers at first, where people were just like, I guess, telling me that I couldn't do it. And I guess that really also pushed me to not prove them wrong, but prove myself that I was able to do it, that I was okay, maybe like not in the traditional way, maybe not in the normal way of what a translator could be. I can find a different way. Maybe I'm not going to be the translator that everyone expects to see or be. Maybe I'm going to be another kind of translator, and why not? And I'm still discovering the kind of translator I am, and I'm still working on that. And I guess in this journey, since I started this play, I've been understanding more as well the way that I'm approaching the text, and bringing that world that is it is written in its original language, and trying to bring it to this context in a very collaborative way, in a very open way, under learning and listening to actors, to fellow translators, other people that are as well giving feedback. So it's been a long process, and that's been the most important thing about translating this play. It's yet, I guess, not the outcome of being able to be part of the book, which is of course a great milestone for everyone, for anyone. But I guess for me personally, it's been the process. It's been so slow, with no particular goal. It's everything has been with no particular intention of like, oh, I need to do this. It's like, okay, let's take it step by step, learning and embracing every failure, and also as well every amazing thing that has happened with it. So and I guess that's for me the feminist aspect of it, that it's not something that is aiming to be perfect or to be a perfect final product, or to be a product. It's about embracing the process, about, I don't know, finding other ways, finding different perspectives of presenting, of bringing a story, a Latin American story here. And talking about this play in particular, okay, so Carla, the first time I saw this play was in 2016. I was just starting my master's here, and I saw it, and I was just like, I loved it. Besides, you know, like the whole world she presents with the play, I also thought it was super interesting that she was using British icons as Princess Diana and Anne Boleyn to talk about a broader topic, which was women, and also gendered diverse people in a general context. And it was really interesting to me, because of course, like we got to talk, and I was like, oh, how did you start thinking about this story? And she's like, well, actually, I got commissioned by the British Council to do this play, and they paid her to write a play about Princess Diana, because they were commemorating the 20 years of her death. And so they wanted her to write an homage to Princess Diana. And well, yes, Carla was like, I'll do my best, you know. And I think she did, honestly. I think she did, because she used this image, but not the real life story, or it's not a biographical play about Diana Spencer. Is actually what we know as Chileans about Diana through the tabloids, through the press. So it's a very filtered, I guess, knowledge of what the story that we know about her. It's like all the gossip that we heard about what's happening, but all those things that happened to her also happened to many women, to many other people that are controlled, that are forced to behave in a certain way, that are I guess pushed to fit into a mold. And that was one of the things that really sort of caught my attention and wanted me to bring it here, and also see what would happen here with a play that is using or talking about British icons through a Chilean lens, which was the most interesting thing to me to do. And then for me, like, what she did is like taking these characters, because of course it's like Diana and what happened to her, but also the story of Anne Boleyn going through, and also this idea, I guess, this idea that we many of us have had as little girls of being a princess, or this Disney kind of like story that is behind, that is so installed in our imaginaries, of the princess being rescued by a man and being fragile. And I guess she sort of rejects that and creates this really dark story. And it's not just the dark story, it's like it's a fairy tale with a very, very sad ending, which is, it's so close to reality, and it's what really I guess connects to my own story as well. And yeah, so as I said, like, this story is about people that are being watched, that are being shaped, that are being punished through the public eye. And I'm still very curious to know what people would say. And I've so far, every time that I pitch this play to theaters and people to be able to stage it, to produce it, I get kind of like bittersweet comments, because some people get really like, oh, but it's about the monarchy. So it's a bit still, a bit controversial, I'd say. But hopefully, things are opening up, and hopefully we get the opportunity to stage it, which is the main goal. And as I said, well, my approach to this process has been a very collaborative and open process, which I'd say for me, besides the topics of the play, is also a very feminist way of working, where I put myself as an equal to others, not as an equal because I'm not aiming to take anyone's place. And I'm trying to just find mine, and learn, and learn all the time, constantly. And I'm very lucky to be able to continue collaborating with Carla, and she's also very extremely generous and open to share with me everything. Sometimes she doesn't know what she wrote stuff, and I'm sure that Xavier can also relate to that as a writer. It's like, I don't know why I wrote that, but I don't know, it's just like made sense at that time. So
Yeah.
it's really nice to be able, as a translator, to call her. It's like, okay, this line doesn't make sense, why did you write that, and like, what do you mean, etc. Especially because Chilean Spanish is so, as William also knows, with Ilajana, it's it's full of slang that sometimes doesn't make sense, and then, or it has many meanings as well, that even a native speaker might wonder why, or etc. So yeah, and and I guess as a migrant theater making, working in a second language, I feel especially connected to translation as a place of encounter. It's a place where, you know, cultures meet, where assumptions are tested, where language expands, and where stories gain new worlds, new resonance, and and I guess this new, I think I want to say new journey as a translator has really shaped my whole approach to theater, and it's
Okay,
been
Fran, I'm going to stop you there because actually I've got a question about that, but that I want to maybe give to everyone about
perfect.
the connections across these different hats and practices. So you've given us lots to think about, and it was really interesting as well to get into the particularities of language in translation, which you brought up, which we might also talk about. But I wonder if, I think William is poised now with a PowerPoint or a presentation. So is it okay if we stop there, Fran, and maybe come back to that idea about connections across the different areas of practice and creative practice that you're all involved in afterwards? So I've given everyone a moment to think about that. And we hear from William about his contribution to the book and his presentation. Thank you, Fran. Okay, we can see the cover of the book, William, on a black background, so it looks like that is ready to go.
You can hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
You can hear me, you can see the book. I feel like that's success.
Yeah, and I'm going to stay
Thanks,
with my
everybody.
microphone on in case.
Thank you very much thanks very much for your patience whilst I fixed that technical issue. I'm told that through the power of editing, it will all be magically seamless once this is put on video catch-up later. But actually, listening to Fran there, it feels quite appropriate that my section should come at the end, because we've heard from Zhui Ning about the putting together of this book that we're here to celebrate. We've then heard from Xavier talking more widely about Latin American theatre. And then we've heard a great, beautiful case study from Fran there. And so I suppose it feels fitting to come back to the offer of, well, this is very exciting. Where can readers find all of this material, or indeed theatre goers? And we're here to celebrate this book, Latin American Plays in Translation, which Zhui Ning talked about so eloquently. And it was great to be reminded of the long process that goes into making a book like this. But also I was reminded, listening to Zhui Ning, of the brilliant contribution that Global Voices Theatre made to our theatre ecology, and especially those of us with a particular interest in international work. And it segues quite nicely into something I wanted to touch on briefly before getting into talking about translation, which is just acknowledging, of course, that Latin American theatre in English exists in a very vibrant way without translation already, certainly in the United States, where there's a large amount of Latin American and Latinx playwrights and theatre makers making work, but also here in the United Kingdom. And although the United Kingdom might not be necessarily known as a place that has a particularly large Latin American and Latinx community, in fact, we do have a significant and increasingly visible in the arts world Latin American theatre community. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to platform some organizations that have been at the center of that visibilization, if that's a word. Firstly, Untold Collective, which is based here in the United Kingdom. As the name suggests, it's a collective of Latin American and Latinx theatre makers who are engaged in playwriting, in creation of showcases, and generally speaking in the platforming of the work of Latin American theatre artists here in London and the UK more widely. Also, Latinx Actors UK, which, as the name suggests, is an organization and directory of Latin American and Latinx performers working here in the United Kingdom, and more widely, LATAM Arts UK, which is a wider collective association organization which works with and represents and platforms the work of Latin Americans working in the arts more widely here in the UK. And I just thought it was important to start by acknowledging that that work is going on. And as much as we love translation and love making translations, this work is also a very important part of what's going on here in the UK theatre scene. And just to close off this little section, just to platform a great play that's coming up in South London very soon. It's actually coming back. It's the Offie award-winning My Uncle Is Not Pablo Escobar, coming back to Brixton House down in South London from April the 7th. This is a sort of South London Latin American female-led Ocean's 11, if you will. It's bilingual, it's exciting, it's funny, it's political, and I highly recommend it. And it's a great example of the great work that's being made by Latinx and Latin American artists here in the United Kingdom. To get back to translation, though, and publishing, and this volume, of course, is published by Methuen Drama, an imprint of Bloomsbury. And as was alluded to by Zhui Ning, Bloomsbury Methuen Drama have been, luckily for those of us who are interested in translation, increasing the number of volumes of anthologies, in particular, of international playwriting in translation. And that certainly includes a good amount of Latin American work. This volume, for example, just came out this week, Dramaturgas Chilenas. The title is in Spanish, but it is a volume of English translations of plays by women Chilean playwrights. That is hot off the press, came out, I think, yesterday or the day before. But I can also point to a more recent volume edited by Sophie and myself, the Methuen Drama book of contemporary Uruguayan plays, which came out last year, and also single author anthologies, such as selected plays by the Cuban playwright Abel González Melo. Bloomsbury also have the Oberon imprint, and so a few titles under the Oberon imprint that are available right now. The Oberon Anthology of Contemporary Argentinian Plays, an anthology of plays by the Chilean playwright Ramón Grifero, translated by Adam Versenyi, and translated by multiple translators, selected plays by the great 20th century Brazilian playwright Nelson Rodrigues. Worth noting as well for any folks who are watching from the academic world that if your institution has a subscription to Drama Online, many of the plays that I've just mentioned that are under the Bloomsbury umbrella are available on that online resource for you to log on to and to read. Other theatre presses that have Latin American volumes and collections, maybe going back a little bit further in time, but Nick Hearn some years ago published this volume of Latin American plays. I think this is maybe going back a couple of decades, but it's still available. And going back to the early 2000s, a volume of plays from Mexico, which came out of the work of the International Department of the Royal Court Theatre, run by the late, great Elise Dodgson, who is acknowledged there as the editor. But there's more. There are many more presses, and those, I must stress, this is just a whistle-stop tour, so there is much more out there. But from Legenda Press, at the risk of embarrassing our moderator, this wonderful volume edited by Sophie of Uruguayan Theatre in Translation, Theory and Practice. This volume by Egret Press, by the Chilean playwright Bosco Israel Calles Alvarez, The Children of Tal Tal. Egret Press, an imprint of Laertes Press, which does a lot of work to publish literature and theatre in translation across many languages. And from this translation project, Kearney Press, a series edited by Juan de Cabrera out of Rockford University. This play by the Cuban playwright Abilio Esteves, translated by Kate Eaton, The Great and Wondrous Circus Finally Closes Its Doors, is just one example of a series of plays by Cuban and other playwrights that this publication project is putting out into the world in bilingual edition. Also, a shout out to the Mercurian, an online theatre translation journal out of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. The editor of the Mercurian is Adam Versenyi. Browsing the pages of the Mercurian over the last few years, we can see examples of English translations of plays from Cuba, Mexico, Argentina, Colombia, and Uruguay. So do dig in there. I might also give a shout out to websites and online translation journals such as Asymptote and Words Without Borders, which also carry theatre in translation. That's publication. What about production? Well, I think those of us who work in theatre in translation know that it is a little bit harder to find and to see and to get hold of opportunities to see plays in translation in the UK and in the United States. But there are some examples that I can point to, many of which, having been produced by theatres or production companies, went on to be published. So these are texts as well that you can find. I was very privileged in 2021, just as we were emerging from the pandemic, to be the translator of the Chilean playwright Pablo Manzi's play Una lucha contra, a fight against, that ran at the Royal Court Theatre upstairs in 2021 and into 2022. And also Sergio Blanco, the Uruguayan playwright, through a collaboration with the translator, producer, and director Daniel Goldman, has had, I think, 4 different plays produced in English over here in the UK. Here's one example, The Rage of Narcissus, which ran at Pleasance here in London, and then at the Arcola Theatre, just down the road from where I'm sitting now, When You Pass Over My Tomb. There's also Thebes Land, which was another translation of Daniel's that was produced at the Arcola. And coming up, this beautiful image that's been selected by the translator and producer, Jenny Witzel, who has translated a play, Work While They Sleep, by the Brazilian playwright Felipe Pereira, which will be coming up very soon at the Camden People's Theatre here in London. What about the United States? You might hear me cry, and I'm sitting in London, so please forgive me if my expertise in that area is less, but I can point to the great Asylum Theatre in Las Vegas, which has been producing work in translation over the past few years, some of which has indeed toured to the United Kingdom. Here we have Antígona by the Peruvian playwright Jose Guanatabe, translated by Cristina Perez Diaz, which was produced by Asylum Theatre back in 2024. And 1 year previously, another Peruvian play, The Therapist by Gabriela Yepes, translated by Gigi Guisado and performed by Gigi Guisado, although I don't think that's Gigi on the poster. I'll have to check with her. Again, another play that was first produced in Las Vegas and then came over to the United Kingdom. A shout out to literary translation organizations. The American Literary Translators Association has an ongoing collaboration with the Tucson-based theatre company Scoundrel and Scamp, where they present a play in translation every year at the American Literary Translators Association's annual conference. And a couple of years ago, that play that was selected was from Mexico. It was Luis Guerrero's play, Russian Roulette, translated by Catherine Walker. And also in the United States, a very active international playwriting and translation project, International Voices, based in Chicago. I'll apologize for the blurriness of this image, but that has included plays from around the world, including in this example from 2024, a play from the Puerto Rican playwright Carlos Canales, translated by Lisa Ana Acosta, namely A Long Night Into Day and the Karloff Lugosi brothers. So some projects to look up there if you want to get access as a viewer or reader to plays in translation. But how do these translations come about? And that is a much more nuanced and complex question to answer. There isn't an awful lot of funding out there for translation. There aren't a lot of translations of plays being commissioned, and funds associated with translation that come, for example, from government bodies are often connected with publication rather than with presentation on a stage. That said, I would point to some initiatives that are taking place to facilitate the translation of plays, which have certainly included Latin American work in their scope. One great company over here in London is Foreign Affairs. Their subtitle, Theatre Beyond Borders, says it all. This is an East London-based theatre company that is focused entirely on platforming theatre in translation in its productions and in its showcase events and in a training program, namely Foreign Affairs Translates, which is a mentorship program which supports translators through the translation of a play. And in the work that Foreign Affairs has been doing with that mentorship program since 2016, they have worked with translators translating plays from Mexico, Brazil, and Colombia, amongst many other countries. Coming slowly to a close now, I can't not mention the Out of the Wings collective, which I am a part of and Sophie's a part of too. Out of the Wings arose from a research project at King's College London, but in its current form has been operating since 2015 with a number of activities entirely focused on the research into translation of and dissemination and platforming of Ibero-American plays, so plays from the Spanish, Portuguese speaking worlds. Those activities include a monthly hybrid table read, we call it, of a new translation in English of a play from Iberia or Latin America, ad hoc events throughout the year celebrating theatre in translation, and crucially our flagship event, an annual festival of play readings, which this year will be taking place at Omnibus Theatre in South London on the week commencing the 13th of July. It opens with a forum, which is a space for people to come and gather and talk about the practice of theatre translation, and then continues with a nightly staged or dramatised reading of an English language premiere of a play from Ibero-America. And over those festivals that have been running since 2015, the festivals have showcased plays from Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Cuba, Ecuador, El Salvador, Mexico, Nicaragua, Panama, Peru, Uruguay, and Venezuela in those rehearsed readings at our festival. And if you include the scope of our monthly table reads as well, we've also read plays from Honduras and Bolivia. Out of the Wings works with plays from any period of time and from anywhere in that region. So we've worked with, for example, the work by Sor Juana de la Cruz, going back to Golden Age Mexico, through to Rafael Guisardo, the Colombian founder of the National Radio Theatre of Colombia in the 1950s. Pablo Antonio Cuadra, who was writing in the early 20th century in Nicaragua, and coming right up to date, some leading contemporary Uruguayan playwrights such as Raquel Diana and Estela Golovchenko. Also through Out of the Wings, through a partnership with, I must pause and say this is a photograph by our dear friend Terry Cripps, who for many years was our photographer at the Out of the Wings festival and sadly passed away this year, but not before leaving us with a wonderful legacy and portfolio of beautiful images capturing the work that we've done over the past 2 years. So here's a moment just to remember the brilliant work of Terry. Thank you, Terry, wherever you are. Just to close this little section, we have, through a partnership with a UK-based press called Inti Press, also been able to publish a number of the plays that have taken place at our festival. I see we're running close to the end of time, so I will wrap up there. But just to say, there we go, a whistle-stop tour of where you can find Latin American plays in English translation. Get Googling, get to your library, get to your bookshop, and happy reading. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, William, for so much information and so many inspiring projects and theatre companies and publishers with which we can follow up. And just to reiterate that so many of them are available internationally. And so please, wherever you are, do look them up, because there are lots of different ways to access these texts. I would like to come back to everyone for a short reflection before we wrap up this about kind of the thing that Fran, I stopped Fran saying because it was something I was noticing coming out of everyone's, which is that all of you and probably all the people listening are involved in many different areas of creative practice, and these inform each other and we learn things from translating, which we apply in teaching or in our directing practice, whatever it might be. And so I'm very curious to ask each of you to give a short reflection on maybe something about from this process, which has been quite long and we've heard lots about it, that has maybe informed another aspect of your creative work, or your approach to it, or what this object of the book can now do that it's out in the world for your creative practice. So from my point of view, working in a university context, a very clear thing is this can now go on reading lists and my students can get it in the library, and they can look at it as a collection as well as looking at individual plays. And that's very exciting for the range of things that they have access to and then the work they might develop with it. So Fran, you were saying how important and formative your MA was. And so this can kind of go back into that for students currently studying undergraduate MA and other types of qualifications. So those are some examples that have come to my mind. And I'd ask you each maybe just in a minute or two to reflect on a connection across your creative practice. And maybe we'll just go back in the order that we started, where we go back to where we started. So go back to Zhui Ning and go around the room that way.
Yeah, sure. That's a very nice like provocation to kick us off for this part. I think for me, it's like I said before, it was a really lovely like closing of the Global Voices legacy, but also outside of my theater making work, where I'm a director and producer, I also work a lot in publishing as a magazine editor. And I took over an immigrant diaspora speculative fiction magazine called Choreo, just around the same time that I started working on these anthologies for Global Voices. And it was a really nice and lovely learning process to sort of combine my various disciplines together. And I think to work with multiple different writers and translators to make sure that their work is not only like translated in the form that I had previously seen on the stage, but also honored with like accuracy and intention on the page in the way that they wanted it to be presented as well. And for me, like the anthology stands as a kind of like a bridging of my various disciplines. And for that, I'm I'm very pleased for that part. And I think, like you said, Sophie as well, I'm also looking forward to seeing books like this and all the books that William has mentioned as well on more reading lists and on referenced and cited in various other places, and hopefully with like academic publications. And now I think one of the things with theater that I've always sort of found difficult, especially on the fringe level where I worked, is that access beyond the actual production can often be really difficult, especially if there's no video archive. Sometimes I was looking over some old Malaysian plays from like the 1970s, and it's like one person has a handwritten version in a box somewhere, and if you don't have that version, that's it for the production. So so in terms of like sort of archiving, in terms of like holding in memory the work that these artists have already done, for me, publications like this are really important.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Xavier, we'll come to you next.
Yeah, and listening to you all had just like exploded my mind in thinking how we're all trying to translate our brain or our thoughts or our reality, or Latin American broken, dreamy, extreme sometimes reality into something that everyone around the world can say, this is also mine, this also belongs to me. That's not just you, that's not just your reality or your vulnerable group, or that's not just your ethnicity or your gender. This is universal, and how we always need to find that path that opens it up for everyone. It reminded me of this one time when I was at the Lark Play Development Center, which, by the way, shout out to them. They are not active anymore, but they were like a huge cornerstone of translating Latin American and European work into English, and they had like Arab programs and Latin American programs, and with Caritas Beach translating, and Bea Carmina and Bea Tom, and it was like such a amazing, inspiring plays. And when I was there, they translated another one of my plays. They said something that really stuck in my mind. And it was like, but you don't look Mexican. It was one of the first things that I was like, oh, is there a way a Mexican should look like? And then they said, but you don't talk Mexican, or you don't speak like a Mexican, and your plays don't read like Mexican. And then I was like, well, maybe playwriting and translating and theater allows everyone to be or not to be, if I may just quote Hamlet on the International Theater Day. But like, we can actually escape what being Mexican or what being Latin American means, and also like get in and get back out and get experience from being in a stage in UK or being translated into English. Like sometimes I read my work in English and I'm like, this is not my play anymore, but at the same time it is. It's not what I wrote, but at the same time it is. There's some betrayal in translation because the translator needs to add layers of what they understand, their experience, and how they believe this word passes or doesn't pass into English or into Russian, Chinese, or whatever language. And in a sense, it allows the play to grow, to say more things that it intended, but also to find new meaning. And aren't we all trying to find new meaning to human existence? What does it mean to be Latin American? What does it mean not to be European or not to be a citizen of the US? Like, who are we when we're not being what people expect us to be, or where we were born? So I think translation opens a door to that, again, to that crevice, to that fracture, to that open driving space where we can, like, liminal space, borderline space, where we can actually escape and then come back to ourselves with more knowledge, with more understanding, not only of ourselves, but of otherness. So, yeah, I mean, this has been such a mind-blowing table, and thank you all for everything you've said, everything you've shared. I just need to go now, Google all the books and try to get my hands on them. And going back to also translating other playwrights, I was like, yeah, because as a playwright myself, who has been translated also, it's so amazing, such a privilege to be able to translate other people's work, because then you get to be like, I can get out of myself into your brain and find a path, create a path for others to understand who you are, what you were trying to say in a way that honors your work, but also at the same time honors the complex realities of the work. So thank you everyone for this opportunity. And I think that would be my closing statement about all the hats that we wear and how we try to convey meaning.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Fran, I'll come to you next.
There we go. So yes, about the book, the actual book, the physical book, just taking to going back to what you said about what it means, that I guess in a very basic way, producing translations is, I guess, one of the hardest parts, and being able to sell, to actually offer a product to theaters, producers, get funding, and always with something physical and tangible as a book, a translation that has been published, always gives us, theater makers, translators, creatives, more credibility, especially in countries where I guess we face some sort of, well, I don't know, discrimination, I guess, for being a second language person, that you're not native in this country. So there's always a little, or just like you need to validate yourself. And this book, and I guess unfortunately, but luckily, it gives us that. So that's like, it's the reality. Then in terms of what I've, I guess, gained from translating or from learning the whole process of translation with this specific play, I guess translation for me has really has made me a better director, and I've been able to open up my ways of creating in ways I never really thought about things before I started translating, because I was like very fixed that the director is the one holding the room, making all the decisions. But then with translation, I was actually being very collaborative and like listening to all of the people in the room. And then I realized that actually that's what a good director also needs. So it's been a thing about making me a better theater maker as well, making me someone that is able to travel from languages, from people, and being able to be very resourceful as well. I guess as a translator, we need to be extremely resourceful. We have to be able to use everything we have to explore the text, the story that we have, as much as possible. In our case, with actors in the rehearsal room, the language itself, if you're able to have access to a collaboration with the writer, that's even better. So I think it's just being more resourceful as well, and to challenge things, to be more, to question things. Why I can't not be a director? Like why it's not possible for me to be a director because I'm not a native speaker? Why not? And then, okay, can I do this way? Well, I'm gonna try it. If it doesn't work, maybe I can do it another way. It's gonna take me longer, so also patience. I guess, yeah, lots of things.
Thank you. That's very generous and very honest and really insightful. Thank you, Fran. William, I'll come to you now.
Thank you. Well, you know, I wonder if I'd invite us to return to the beginning, which was to remind us of Zhui Ning's story about how this volume came about, and how, you know, that is a reminder in more general terms, I suppose, of the fact that every single book that I listed in that frantic tour is the outcome of a lot of work by one or more people. Sometimes one person. Some of these volumes, it's just one person on their own, but sometimes it's large groups of collaborators. And every book that is published of plays in translation has come through a particular journey, which will not have been straightforward. And so just a moment to acknowledge and recognize that, I suppose. But also to acknowledge once again, like the work of Global Voices Theatre and the wonderful work that Zhui Ning and Laura and Robin did for those period of years, bringing such a wealth and such a range of work from around the world, work in translation, work not in translation, work presented in different ways. And this book and the previous volume of work that came out of that work just being, well, Professor Catherine Boyle, who is the director of the Out of the Wings project, often talks about the importance of making the space. When we work in international theatre and theatre translation, we make the space and we invite people to come to it. And I think one thing that Global Voices did beautifully was make the space. They made physical space and made virtual space for theatre practitioners to encounter each other and for audiences to encounter their work. And I guess what's a beautiful thing about this book is that this is that space made physical, that space made into a physical artifact, which will carry the work of these writers and these translators, yes, but also the work of three brilliant producers. So I would offer my gratitude and admiration for the mighty triumvirate of Global Voices, and may all of your activities that you engage in future as individuals flourish.
Thank you, William. I think that's a wonderful note on which to end, sort of coming back to the beginning, but acknowledging that work that has enabled this volume to come into being and will enable new work to be generated in all the ways we've just reflected on. Maybe even you've maybe even inspired ideas through this conversation. Maybe you've even got ideas yourself for future work. I think one of the things that really stood out to me as you're all talking was the importance of those networks and connections and collaborations, whether it's through an introduction, whether it's through forming a company or a group who work together for a specific period of time, whether it's through participating in a collective or another group or network that meet together and exchange. And this, in a small way, has been another way of doing that. It's been great to exchange and share ideas through the platform of HowlRound and with different people who will be listening in and maybe listening in the future, as this is being recorded to be shared. So Thank you to everyone. Thank you for your time, for your ideas, and thank you to everyone who is and will be watching this. Please do follow up on these suggestions, do get reading, and do continue creating, producing, and taking interest in Latin American theatre. There will be much more of it to come in the future. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Sophie,
Thank you,
for
Sophie,
moderating.
for moderating.
Thank you.